Hello and welcome to part 2 of painting Harley Quinn from Zez Studios. If you haven't seen part 1, where I paint the base with Bud and Lou, I will try to link it in the video. If not, you'll find it in the description. As mentioned in part 1, I am painting this 1/4 scale Harley to enter into my local scale model competition. Results at the end of this video. On to the project. Harley is primed with Createx Autoborn Sealer. I like this primer as it is sandable and easy to work with. In the comics, the Joker pushes Harley into a vat of chemicals, bleaching her skin. This is the look I was aiming towards, as opposed to the heavy white makeup look that is often seen. However, I also wanted to keep warmth in the skin, instead of it looking dead, and this proved a challenge finding the right balance. First, I cover all skin areas with Detail Red Violet from Createx Wicked range. I try to get full coverage, usually 2 to 3 coats. However, if I miss a spot, say like between the legs, the black won't look out of place. Once the Red Violet is done, I use Wicked Red, also from Createx, spraying into the shadow areas. I think this is done to simulate the blood pooling effect of gravity. However, I don't notice it with the way I do skin, so I'll probably stop using it from now on. To make the skin more person-like, I spray Detail Universal Flesh Tone from Createx. It's very much on the red side of skin tones, hoping to give the warmth that I am after. I try to get full coverage at all angles. This is probably why the red is useless for me. To try and give Harley that fair skin, I use thinned elfic flesh from Vallejo and spray it in light, transparent layers from above, trying to leave some of the base tone in the shadows. I then seal with a Micador varnish. This is an alcohol-based acrylic varnish. Once it is fully dry, it helps protect the base color from the next stage. Washes. I set up said washes in this disgusting palette using transparent yellow, blue, and red, as well as a skin wash ink from Vallejo. These are very thin down, like 1 drop of paint to 20, 30, 40 odd drops of water. I have no idea. I use water as it doesn't suspend the paint pigment like a proper thinners, making it break up unevenly, giving minor variations and imperfections in the skin, making it look a little more real. I like to start with the yellow wash, followed by the blue, then red, and finally the skin wash. I only want the washes to tint the skin. I don't want any washes to pool or dry before I can pat it off with a paper towel, some sponges, even a dry brush to get into the hard to reach places, even if it means doing it in sections. I also add a wash of elfic flesh to try and make the skin even fairer before deciding where the skin needs to go from there. And it needed to go to the spray booth, as I just wasn't quite happy with it. With the airbrush, I spray into the shadow areas with the skin wash, giving Harley a nice tan before going back from above with the elfic flesh. Unfortunately, I still wasn't happy, so back to the universal flesh tone, aiming at the shadows before coming back with the elfic flesh once again. Don't worry, after all of that effort, I screw up the skin tone anyway. More on that later. I start the clothing from the ground up, making sure to take the time to use some protection for my wood. I once again took inspiration from the comics. 1 red shoe, 1 black. 1 red sock, 1 black, with the colours alternating sides with each item of clothing. I also tried to give the shoes a kind of Converse look with the whitish toe caps and rubber. I started by slopping down some deck tan on both shoes for under the red. I'm not concerned with pretty or even 100% coverage. For the red, I used Naphthol Crimson from Jasonia. It's a heavier body artist acrylic, nothing special really. I simply used it because I have lots of it. Using a fluffy brush, I slop on a couple of coats of that too. When I'm happy with the red, I go back over the areas I want to be white with deck tan. Of course, I add some white, decide it's too white, and go back to the deck tan. For the black on all the clothing, including the shoes, I used a violet black. I use a 2 to 3 ratio black to violet ink. Using pure black and pure white rarely looks right. There are exceptions, of course. I used violet instead of blue in my black because I felt it went with the red just a little bit nicer. I use this violet black to start refining the details along with the red and deck tan where needed. Once they look like shoes, I smother them in a mix of carbon black, burnt sienna and burnt umber oil paints. I'll leave them an hour or so before wiping it off again, giving the shoes an old, worn look. I decided to base both socks with the black mix, paint the black sock red, and try to dry brush the red sock red, leaving the black in the grooves. This didn't work as planned, but that's all good. Then I dry brushed the black sock. This worked much better. I also paint the red band, the lining of the knee gasket, and the diamonds on the black sock before painting the black band and the star on the red sock. I'm sick of the word sock right now. I paint black metallic on the black knee pad and red metallic on the, well, you guessed it, red knee pad. The black diamond black, the red diamond's red. I add a transparent red to all those little trimmings to help them stand out from the other red. I also add the violet black over the black metallic, making it less shiny, but still more shiny than if it was just straight black. Of course, I cover all of this in the same black-brown oil mix, give it an hour to start curing, and wipe it off again. Using these special toothpick-like things with cotton wool on the tips, I get into the grooves on the black sock, bringing the red stripes back. Thinking I was clever, I masked off the skin to paint the shorts. I'm not clever. When I removed the tape later, the white tape left what I can only describe as a faint tan line. So faint it can't really be seen on the camera, but it was really obvious in person. Anyway, all the clothes from here are basically the same. I use a base color of the violet black, use deck tan on all the trimmings so the red is brighter in those places. I slap on the red with a fluffy brush and then refine the details with the violet black. I go over the brighter red trimmings with the transparent red to separate the color further, then cover in oil, wipe off, and get oily fingerprints all over the skin. For the belt, I used polished gold and chainmail silver. I also dry brushed some neutral grey on the back of the belt to highlight the texture in the leather. The necklace was just violet black, dry brushed with neutral grey, polished gold buckle, deck tan, then transparent red for the heart. Now I can shut up for a bit. The chains were painted with chainmail silver and a little fluffy. Being very careful around the skin. End up using a very thin coating of the Tamiya panel liner to give the chain an older, dirtier look. The gloves were painted in the violet black with a neutral grey dry brush and chainmail silver spikes. I started the mallet with mahogany brown slapped all over, followed up with a transparent wood grain. I wanted the head of the mallet to look like a single stump of wood cut directly from the tree. So to start with, I used a transparent natural wood grain. It didn't really look right, so I dry brushed highlight skin, focusing on the mallet faces before brushing the whole mallet to bring out some extra detail. A bit of orange ochre around the face edge for that fresher cut look, before grabbing a tiny sponge and randomly dabbing the different shades of brown all over the wood for some variation. I then coat it completely in a thinned down transparent wood grain to help it all come together. I start the metal around the hammer with a black metallic. I then add in actual black nail heads before weathering the metal with a mix of filthy brown, parasite brown, and transparent wood grain, mostly in that order, focusing on the nail heads and welds where the moisture will build up. I also imagine Harley storing the mallet handle upright against a wall, hence the flow of the rust. The handle is just deck tan, red, and the violet black. Before going any further with the skin, I wanted to base the hair to give me an idea of how fair Harley's skin actually looks. I was going to use dark sand from Vallejo, however I had bugger all left, so I decided to go with beige from Vallejo, and I am glad I did. That is a nice blonde. I will be using it again. I used a thinned out version of the beige close to the hairline. I do this to try not have a hard line, instead having this light transition from skin to hair. Now, I'm not sure why, probably because I'm not all that bright, I decided to paint the glove on the mallet hand and fix some of the edging around the shorts, knowing I've got to fix the skin tone anyway, which I tried to fix by brush to start with. I did not have the patience for that shit. Didn't stop me from trying though. After that complete clusterfuck of a fix-it attempt, I went back to the booth. While I prefer the brush, the airbrush has its place. I put Harley in a blue nappy and started spraying with universal flesh tone to start. A quick mist and removal of the yellow, blue, red and skin washes, followed again with the elfic flesh over the top. This time I'm happy. I also make sure to seal everything. I'm not sure I can take any more mistakes at this stage. Now I fix everything that got a fleshy overspray, and while I'm at it, I start adding the final details, like Harley's fingernails that I paint in an alternating pattern with squid pink and electric blue from the Vallejo game color range. I also use these colors for hair ties and hair tips later on. With the red wash, I start adding in details to the body, letting the color build up very slowly. I do this to the knuckles on the hands, around the muscles on her back, her armpits, abs, collarbones, boobs, and butt cheek crease. For the portraits, I first add highlight skin to the eyes and teeth, never pure white, it looks solid. The tongue was a concoction of watered down transparent red, squid pink and violet ink until it looked tongue-like. I started the lipstick with a violet ink, then used transparent red over that. I wanted a thin purple outline. It didn't happen. So sad. Still turned out really nice. When I was happy with the mouths, I went on to the eye caterpillars. I mixed up a brown black to base them, being very careful not to slip. Using some thinned down transparent brown and the brown black mix, I go over the eyebrows, trying to make them look like little hairy strips. Before I start on the eyes, I get my red wash and I build up some color around the nose, eyes, ears, cheeks, and the jawline. Not too much, I don't want to ruin that fair skin color. The eyes I started with a Vallejo dark Peruvian blue, followed up with electric blue, trying to keep a dark ring on the outside. Then I use Vallejo sky blue, trying to keep mostly to the bottom half of the iris. I add in pure black for the pupil and a couple of pure white dots for reflection. Sounds easy, right? My hands say otherwise. I hate painting eyes, but I don't want to resort to using decals yet. And after all of that, it was time to add the makeup. I am clueless when it comes to makeup. I just added some black for eyeliner and mascara, and I'm pretty sure I did that wrong. Then I put in some pink and blue for the eyeshadow. This would have been much better if I had have used an airbrush. I left hard lines around the edges of the pink and the blue, and it looked more like face paint, not makeup. To make fix, I used a wet toothpick to rub and smooth, very carefully, the edges of the eyeshadow. I also used some thinned out elfic flesh between the eyeshadow and the eyebrow to help with softening the transition. With the portraits done, I dry brush the hair with some highlight flesh, followed with just a touch of metallic medium. I only use this for blonde hair to give that little bit of extra shine on top. I colour in the tips and ties with pink and blue, and the hair is done. Into the home stretch now. I've already sealed the skin with Vallejo matte aerosol varnish. This gives a proper matte look. The shorts, corset and jacket are varnished with a Micador varnish. It says matte, but it kind of looks more like a satin, giving that fake leather polyurethane or whatever it is look. I add some gloss varnish to Harley's fingernails, the heart on the choker, the edging of the shorts and corset, as well as her eyes, mouth and lips. I add satin to all the metal parts, then I glue the parts I want stuck to each other using mainly epoxy for the added strength. After all that, Harley is finally done. And the results of the competition? Well, Harley came third. However, she also took out Best in Show and was third in the People's Choice, so I am really happy with that. Second place was this awesome little dude. Pretty cool, eh? First place, however, was also me, with Kratos, that I decided to enter last minute. I'm pretty fucking happy about that. Now, the final shots.